Hello again. I'm judging another DebateArt.com debate. It's between O&T and American Debater 24. Better gun control. And apparently American Debater is con on better gun control. The description states specifically that con must argue that we need no or less change to gun control laws as they currently are. No or less change as they currently are. I'm not sure that sentence makes a lot of sense, to be honest with you. But let's just say generally we'll go the very general definition unless they impose a new one within the rounds of the debate. O&T says, thousands of men, women, and children die from guns. We live in a country where 69% of parents say they moderately to extremely fear mass shooting at their child's school. I can tell you that's natural. I have the same fears as a parent. In 2023, 6,192 children were shot by a gun. Think about that for a moment. The final number alone stands as enough reason that something needs to change. I'm not saying that we should go crazy. I'm saying that what we are doing now is obviously not enough. Okay, so O&T is arguing that we need more gun control, not to ban guns or anything like that. For simplicity and focus of argument, I will not go into detail regarding the exact measures could be used to mitigate these numbers unless so requested by con. I think you need to, because your plan, depending on what it is, could be really terrible or really good, and that really goodness, how good the plan is, can be overlooked by just not providing it. For simplicity and focus argument, we already read that part. I will, however, provide a common example. New Zealand has far more regulations on guns than the U.S. has in 2023. The numbers below are both including suicides. New Zealand has 2.4 gun deaths per million people. The U.S. has 57.3 gun deaths per million people. Safe to say that we should manage our gun control a little more like New Zealand. Just to be very clear, citizens of New Zealand are allowed to own guns. There's no law against it. The only difference is the extra precautions in gun control. You have to go through background checks no matter where you buy the gun. The background checks are to date and more in depth. None of these things stop good gun owners from getting guns. And we need to be doing more to make sure that good gun owners are the only gun owners in the U.S. Here are the sources I use for the numbers. Okay. And that's up to con to challenge those sources, so I don't really look into them. I just take people's word for it unless it's challenged. It is often a good idea to explain how these numbers, how the sources came to these numbers for pro. But here's what I do when I see stuff like this. I go ahead and copy and paste some of these arguments into my vote. Here you go. So that's fear of gun control. Am I showing my screen? Yes, I am. Last time I did a debate, I wasn't showing my screen, and it was weird. Why is that only... whatever. Go pros arguments. So this is essentially fear is why we should lower gun deaths. It's not one of his better arguments, but there's one. And there we go. And his other argument is 6,000 children were shot by gun. I'm going to number these, I guess. That way they're easy to keep track of. Because we're going to copy and paste the rebuttals underneath them as well. Get back there. Why is that doing that? What am I doing wrong? There we go. Okay, we'll do this. There, that makes it easier for me. Are there any more arguments? New Zealand has less gun deaths because their gun laws are more strict. Here, we'll copy and paste that just to keep it short. And we'll see if Khan brings it up, but they also have more rapes and property crimes and stuff after they banned guns. And they also have a little bit more homogenous society than the United States does. So, that could play into that. We need to, and I wonder if he should go into this. We need to do more to make sure that good gun owners are only gun owners in the U.S. How do you do it without banning guns? How would you make sure that every single person that owns one is a good guy, as you say? Okay, so American debater is arguing now, and I'm going to go ahead and see. I don't know if we don't know what kind of case he'll provide, like if it'll be all rebuttals or all forward arguments. Let's see. Khan's arguments. Come back to that. Pros using a statistical argument to say gun control needs to be increased. However, when we get into statistics, gun-related deaths do not affect even 1% of the population. So that's a rebuttal. That doesn't mean that, I mean, we still are going to have to do an impact analysis, so that just mitigates the potential harm. Oh, we'll just go down here. We'll use that as a, I'll call that a positive argument. The state with the highest number of gun-related deaths is Mississippi, and that is only 29.6 per 100,000 people. That's a fucking lot, dude. That's only 0.00296%. In contrast, the lowest number of gun-related deaths in the state of Massachusetts, which only has 3.3 deaths per 100,000. That's only 0.0033%. So I asked both the audience and my opponent this question. Don't ask us questions, man. Just give us the damn arguments. What is the point of increasing restrictions on guns when not even 1% of Americans are dying from it a year? Even pros on math establishes this fact. Well, hopefully he goes into more detail, but you should be arguing... Well, we already copy and pasted the argument, so it's fine. But why like, if you show no benefits from owning guns and the only damage is small damage, then pro still wins. So hopefully Khan, before, I haven't read the rest of this yet, but hopefully he gets into why we want people to have guns. While mass shootings are scary, parents are naturally in their right to be afraid of them. How can that justify gun restrictions? The U.S. has over 130,000 schools. Out of that number, only 348 schools were subject to mass shootings in 2023. These numbers look high to me, man. I don't think that you're presenting this in a good way. That is literally only 27%. You literally have a higher chance of getting a heart attack or a bad diet than getting shot in the U.S., much less at the school. So this is a response to the fear argument of it. Oops. And usually I like to keep that under it, straight under it, but I feel like these are the only arguments that are going to be had. It's a great thing that New Zealand is doing well with its own country on the issue of laws. However, America is a different society with unique problems that cannot be solved by imported double talk. Furthermore, gun violence is not an issue that is affecting most Americans as it stands, and we are really going to risk violating the Second Amendment. So finally we get into some arguments for guns instead of rebuttals. And if you look, and I haven't read this yet, but it looks like maybe 1 or 2 sentences dedicated to his position. I think a lot of debaters get into this issue on the site where they are mostly focused on shooting down the other side's arguments instead of making any positive argumentation. And when you do that, then no matter how badly you damage their side of the argument, they still have a little bit left standing. I think this is a good rebuttal. It should be expanded on, and maybe some of the differences between New Zealand and America talked about more. I think that's a good rebuttal. It's great that, you know, they're a different society with their own unique problems. What works there might not work here, and vice versa. They cannot be solved by imported double talk. That's literally a meaningless statement, imported double talk. There we go. We'll call that a rebuttal. Let's get more room so I can read it easier. Rebuttal. Actually, I'll put the word con there, because that could mess me up. Con. It's great that New Zealand is doing well within its own country on the issue of laws. However, okay, whatever. They cannot be. Are we really going to risk violating the Second Amendment, causing civil unrest, and wasting government time and resources on something that isn't a statistical problem? I believe in alternative solutions, such as buffing up security in schools, are far better investments than failed experiment known as gun control, which has not stopped any mass shootings up to date. Well, you don't know that until you do it. Let's copy and paste this. Really going to risk. Your argument shouldn't be questions. It should be statements supported by facts. Okay, so we're going to go back to Pro. Pro's going to respond to these, hopefully, and we'll see what happens. Okay, Pro, the bulk of your argument is that, in proportion to the rest of the populations, the victim of gun violence seem like such a small number that the lives don't matter enough to enact new gun restrictions. You make that clear in your question. Then he repeats this question. So I asked both the audience and my opponent, this question was the point of increasing restrictions when even 1% of Americans are not even dying from it. That 1% number is amassed for 18,874 lives. 18,874,000. Okay, I think O&T is not a native English speaker. I forget where I get that impression from, but and that's why I don't award spelling and grammar points usually. It's not fair to non-native speakers. The Constitution clearly states that each person has a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's not in the Constitution. I'm going to Google that. That's not in the Constitution. Just to make sure I'm not an idiot. I think it's in the Declaration of Independence. Yeah, it's from the Declaration of Independence. Alright, not a big deal. It's not a constitutional thing. It is the government's duty to protect them. Also, the number is... The Declaration of Independence is okay, I'll shut up now, but that I don't need to say it. Excluding from suicide, so there's even more. Alright, let's go here. Pro. Respond. What? I didn't mean to do that. Where are we at? Pro. Why did that happen? I gotta figure out how to do that so I can do it again when I need it. So that's a response to that. Also, that number is just those who are shot. It disregards family and friends who knew the person and who would have been torn apart by grief and ripple effect that has. So saying that 18,000 aren't important enough to take action couldn't be less true. And this excludes injuries and all that. Okay, I'll add that too. And I'm going to count that as a separate point because that's going to weigh in. Oh, not there. My counter argument also applies to your point about school shootings. No matter how small the percentage is, I think that an attempted massacre in 348 schools, and some tragically aren't attempted, in fact, justifies action. Let's see, is that a rebuttal for anything? Let's see. Yeah, right there. It's great that New Zealand is doing well. I disagree with the logic. Okay, so this is bringing up that New Zealand is different than the United States. So let's see how Pro responds. I disagree. The logic of regulations is exactly the same. The situation and the regulations aren't different. New Zealand was just an example. We've also seen more and more well thought out gun control regulations in a multitude of countries. This is not really a rebuttal. And this is like a bare assertion, and you didn't back it up, and it doesn't strike me as true that New Zealand and the United States have the same situations. It sounds like they're going to be wildly different places. And we also see more and well thought out gun regulations. Pro, you're going to have to tell me where you've seen that. You can't just expect me to accept that. I accept a lot of things without thinking about it too much, but that's not... That's below that bar. And I accept more than I should just because it's your opponent's job to point it out, not mine. Are we really going to risk violating the Second Amendment? Where in the Second Amendment does it state that reasonable regulation is illegal? That's right. So he had a Second Amendment argument. Oh, there we go. But he's not calling for outright ban, Pro. So it kind of doesn't work here. Causing civil unrest, wasting government time, resources on something that isn't a statistical problem. It's not about the process of establishing such laws. It's only about whether they're not a good idea or not. Yeah, it actually is. You do have to take this into account, so that's not a good rebuttal. You got to take into account what's going to happen when you pass the laws. So if you pass a law and it results in how do I say this? It's not, your motives aren't the only thing that's important. Matter of fact, your motives are probably the least important thing when thinking about policy making. So he dropped Khan's argument for the most part. So I'm going to tell you, Pro, you need to just... I think you don't have to do much to disprove this, because you're just talking about some regulations, and any new thing you do, it's going to probably get protests, a little bit of civil unrest. That doesn't mean, like, the civil unrest is unlikely to result in 18,000 deaths, so the impact's not going to be that big, and it's and you're just talking about some reasonable regulations. What you're saying, you're not talking about an outright ban. So you might not even have that much civil unrest over it. People might be like, who cares? You know, depending on what your regulations are. I think that's why you should have brought them up too, and why Khan should not let you get away with not bringing up what those are. Khan says, Pro's going to respond to this. What Khan says: I believe alternative solutions such as buffing up security is a far better investment than the failed experiment known as gun control, which has stopped any mass shootings up to date, which has not stopped mass. It will certainly be cheaper to implement regulations than effectively modify every school. That's a decent rebuttal. See, it'd be cheaper to implement regulations than modify every school. School shootings are only a small part of the problem. This is exactly one of my points. Current gun control is obviously ineffective and needs expanded and improved upon. Alright, those are both fair points. But they're weak points also. So both of you are not doing your greatest, and I almost can't blame O&T, or I don't know, when somebody's not giving a lot of effort, then I usually place the blame mostly on the losing side of the debate, but I probably should just give equal blame. You're both at fault for not putting in more effort than this. My esteemed opponent, what makes him esteemed? My esteemed opponent is making an emotional-based argument, not a logical or factual one. I mean, okay. The U.S. Constitution does not say people have a right to life. That's not a proper representation of the law. Secondly, have you never heard of the term death in Texas? Yes, people dying is sad, but people die every day. No law or regulation can prevent that. Trying to force more legislation that has already failed just because people die is not practical. Why are you presupposing the legislation that's never been tried is going to fail? Where in the Second Amendment does it state that reasonable regulation is illegal? Pro does not seem to understand the term reasonable is a subjective term that can easily go against the Second Amendment. Some states think it's reasonable to allow people to open carry, others do not. No, open carry is legal, actually, in all states. Others do not. Regulation is based on the subjective term reasonable and disaster plan. Let me just check that, just how accurate. I think open carry, legal. And what states? The last I looked into it, I thought it was 31 open carry states and 10 with permissive open carry. "34 states allow open carry without a permit." So that means the rest probably allow it with a permit. I think it's legal in all 50 states, but there's some require more permits than others. Others, really, this is based on subjective term. Reasonable is a disaster of a plan. Well, that's right, Pro doesn't have much of a plan. But he did say the term reasonable. It would certainly be cheaper to implement regulations and start hiring security at all schools and stuff. No, the cheapest option would be nothing at all, since the death rate is incredibly low. But that would not be practical, so creating better security measures is fastest and best thing. The cheapest option is not doing nothing at all. Pretty much no matter where you are on the issue, you think that shootings need to be lower somehow. This is exactly one of my points. This is Pro now. He's quoting Pro. "This is exactly one of my points. Current gun control is obviously ineffective and needs expanded upon and improved. So, if gun control is indeed a failure, why should we expand on an ideal that hasn't worked? I have three main problems with Pro's arguments. It lacks practical planning. Most Pro seems to want is to make reasonable regulations with no consideration of the subjective terminology can be used." It is subjective. That's why Pro should have offered a plan. But Pro, you gotta do, I mean, Con, you gotta do more here also. The argument is emotionally driven. Pro seems more focused on the simple fact of an incredibly low number of people trying to implement national change that Americans may not want, with no guarantee that it will work. It assumes criminals care about the law. Above all, gun laws do not work. This is a new argument. I feel like it's... it assumes criminals are about the law above all gun laws that do not work because criminals do not care what the law says. They will have guns and we will all be more defenseless. Okay, so that's saying that it only takes guns out of the hands of normal people. I feel like you should have mentioned this in round 1, but that's okay. Lastly, I believe it's important to note that there are more guns than people in the United States. That makes regulating all guns and preventing them from being used in the manner that they already are to commit crimes is impossible. The nations Pro uses as an example do not have the same problems to be good comparisons. That's fair also. So I'm going to take your argument here. Now where is that? Alright. I get a feeling I won't even need to look through the notes much for this one. Round 3. Pro. And he quotes Con a few times. I'm probably not going to let you know each time, just kind of guess. I'll be highlighting it. It's the shaded areas. When I highlight the shaded areas, he's quoting him. First, you made a valid point that my argument had too much emotion in it. I don't know. I mean, I think it's okay to have a little bit of emotion. Emotion is certainly a way to be persuasive. And when you're talking about death, it helps to understand the impact. Though the argument itself is still based off numbers. No matter how you put it, 18,000 lives a year, not counting suicides, which could also be stopped with gun control, is a lot of people. 3 times more American lives than D-Day and Hurricane Katrina combined. Your numbers also don't include non-fatal casualties that people around said person who may also be deeply affected by it. Quoting Con, it lacks practical planning. The most Pro teams wants to do is make reasonable regulations, and terminology is subjective. Pro, I want to keep the discussion on the merits of gun control, but since you want specifics, I will provide them. There are several options here. Gun licensing is a big one. Universal background checks, and making those background checks more thorough and relevant, which could require basic gun training. Those are just a few examples. Again, this debate is not about the best way to implement it. The debate is about whether or not we should. Well, there's an unlimited amount of ways you could implement something like that, so it's a little bit about how you would implement it. Even this isn't really that good. There are several options here. Gun licensing is a big one. Well, we already have gun licensing, so what do you mean? Universal background checks and making those background checks more thorough and relevant. Everybody always says more. What do you mean by more? What would you change? We could require basic gun training. What do you mean by that? Like send everybody to boot camp? These are just a few examples. Again, this debate is not about the best way to implement it. This debate is about whether or not we should improve it. So that matters. There's no guarantee it would work, is what he says. I already addressed the first part, the incredibly low number of people trying to implement national change that Americans may want. 6 of every 10 Americans say it's easy to get a gun, and they favor sticker gun laws, and only about 1.5 out of 10 want looser gun restrictions, where the middle is either unsure or has neither opinion or is unsure. Okay. All the examples we have seen around the world beg to differ. That's not a guarantee it will work. Just a guarantee it worked there, because it's already been done. It assumes criminals care about the law. Above all, gun laws do not work in America because criminals do not care what the law says. They will have guns and people will be more defenseless. And Pro says stricter gun laws would greatly reduce the number of guns on the streets, make it much harder for criminals to get guns. The vast majority of mass shootings aren't planned because of the state of gun laws. An insane man could walk into a store and pass background checks in only a few minutes. I don't think so. I don't think that's true. I think it's you have, the background checks take like a week or something like that. Gun laws would also reduce accidental deaths and greatly reduce the around 30,000 people who commit suicide using firearms, as they need to wait and hopefully get things sorted out. People will be more defenseless. It's ridiculous. Nowhere have I proposed that we take guns away from good people. Oh, that's true too. Copy and paste. Alright, there we go. He said, well, I'll just probably write that in. Pro reduces amount of guns available and does not outlaw guns, so good people still have them. That's a good rebuttal for that. Other sources. That's the citation. Nobody's challenging anybody's citations, so we're good. We don't have to check those. Anyway, Khan prints up. Everybody remembers what Pro said, right? So I'll just skip to how he responds. I appreciate you recognize my argument about emotions. Also, 18,000 people are not a large number when you compare it to the highest cause of death in America, which is heart-related, ranges from 280 to 325,000. Hey, 1 million deaths are nothing if you compare it to how many people were killed in World War II. Moreover, heart disease is worse and is not a top reason for death in America, but also resulted in close to 1 million deaths in 2021 alone. It's not a big number in comparison to things. That's great. So you're saying it doesn't matter because it's small in comparison to other things? It's okay if somebody steals $5 from me. At least it wasn't 1,000. Dude, that wouldn't make it okay. Okay, so this is another response. I acknowledge that guns are very easy to get in the U.S. You probably shouldn't, because it's not as easy as Pro is making it out to be. However, that is one of the points. There are more firearms than people in this country, which makes it impossible for the government to control them. No matter what laws are enacted, there will always be illegal markets for guns. There will always be, but can you reduce the amount? We should focus on finding solutions within our own country for the issues we face. That's why I call this argument imported double talk. Ultimately, the 18,000 people you say is such a big number is only around 1.84% compared to heart disease. Hence, we should not waste time on a problem that is inherently unsolvable and that affects less than 1% of people. We should prioritize life-saving medical procedures and lower obesity before gun violence. Maybe we should prioritize those things before that, but it doesn't mean... You can't argue there's bigger problems, so we should ignore this problem. It just means we need to focus also on those bigger problems. We need to have people responsible for helping with obesity and for people that can improve the state of medicine. Or improve, our diet and lifestyles as a whole in ways that don't harm our freedoms while doing it. And this is the last round. This is where they should be kind of weighing their arguments and telling us how to judge the debate. Your argument is almost entirely about how heart disease kills far more people than guns, and therefore the people who die from gun violence are irrelevant. That is what he's arguing. Yeah. However, there are some important differences between heart disease and gun violence. One reason is that dying from heart disease is often out of human control. I mean, at some point you got to, but most of the time when you die of pretty much anything is your fault some way. But, you know, if you have the perfect diet, you could probably get an extra 10, 20 years. So, it's not like it's avoidable, but at the same time, if you get a heart attack even a day earlier than you had to have it, it's your fault. Perfectly healthy people die of heart disease. Well, yeah, it gets everybody at some point. If not that, then something else, right? And in a lot of cases, it can't be fixed. Another key difference is that that's not the most cases. There's so many fat people in the United States, and most of the Western world now. It's not the case that most of these heart attacks are unavoidable. Another key difference is that heart disease overwhelmingly occurs to seniors. Not to say that this doesn't happen to younger people, it just tends to be far less often and less serious. Heart disease mostly affects people who have already lived full lives, left their mark. Though it's still sad, it's completely different than somebody massacring young children. It is different. But it's also kind of heartless to say that, okay, well, you know, they lived a full life. Who gives a fuck if they die of a heart attack? Okay. So both of you seem kind of heartless in a way. Yeah, their lives aren't as important. While heart disease is obviously still bad, it's also something that, on the most part, is out of control, and it's far better to die than God. This is, I take an issue with Owen's round because he's just, he almost should just ignore that shit and just focus on framing the debate in a way that's beneficial to him. Your second argument is gun control measures would be ineffective. And it's too late for rebuttals. I'm not going to count any of your rebuttals here. It's not, because that's almost like a new round when you offer new rebuttals. One reason you state for this is that solutions from other countries won't solve America's problems. You call it imported double talk. Yeah, and he didn't really define that too well. He's just saying this talk from other countries that he doesn't like. This seems logical, but isn't true. It doesn't seem logical at all, buddy. Before New Zealand passed its strict gun laws, it was facing a problem much the same as the U.S., mass shootings and too many guns on the streets to make those shootings possible. I think actually they were facing just an odd year. They had on average less than one mass shooting a year, if I remember correctly. And then they had like a bad year, and that year had maybe two high-profile mass killings. And it, you know, instead of evaluating policy in a logical way, people were emotional. We gotta do something. That's always like the most dangerous time in a country, is when people are panicking over a recent event and saying, we gotta do something. There should almost be a ban, like after a major event. Like, you can't make a policy concerning that for 5 years until it's out of the public conscious, so you can sit there and evaluate in a non-emotional way. The problems are the same, and the logic for fixing them is also the same. While the solution may vary from one country to another, we can still use the solution to learn from and create a plan that is right for our country. Not only should government take action to save thousands of lives, but they should take action because the American public views it to be a problem. 83% of Americans say that gun violence is a moderately to very big problem. It's a problem to those who aren't. I like how you bring it around back to this, because this is something that could almost get lost if you didn't. Many people are also indirectly affected. It's also great that he's calling the point the people indirectly affected, because that can be lost when you do impact calculus for the debate. So I urge you to vote pro. Gun control is shown to work in examples of situations similar to ours. Would save thousands of lives, and it's addressing something that the people says needs to be addressed. Once you look at the arguments in play here, it becomes clear we should implement better gun control. I would also like to re-elaborate that the point of this debate is whether or not more gun laws would be good for a country. I can confidently state I have done a good job of proving that. This debate is not, however, about whether or not gun violence is the biggest problem in the U.S. All sources I use will be in comments. Okay, so I can confidently say I have done a good job proving that. I can confidently say that you didn't put a lot of effort into this. I mean, we have 3,000 max argument characters. How many did you use here? Let's go to your first round. Let's say that you lost confidence in your opponent because of this. So I can go look at how many characters this is. We'll see. Did you cram as much argumentation in here as you could fit? Let's see. We got Obsidian Notebook here. (2,423 characters). Alright. So you could have fit 600 more characters in there. And mine's showing like a lot of spaces, so. Could you have consolidated some stuff you said? I will, however, provide a common example. Instead of example. You cut this off, boom, you can fit much more characters. New Zealand has far more. You don't have to say far more. Has more regulations on guns than the US. And we know you're talking about guns than the US. And then you can delete has. So can you consolidate this and get more room? And 2023. The numbers below are both including suicides. So I feel like you could consolidate this a lot more. Like, I don't know how many characters I got rid of, but you can go down every sentence and do that. So I wouldn't say it's a lot of effort. Here are the sources I use for the numbers instead of deleting that altogether, or just putting the word sources here. So look, we've got it's 2,324 characters now, and it was 2,500 before, or something like that. Think about that for a moment. No, don't think about that for a moment. Cut that shit out of there. That final number alone stands as enough reason that something needs to change. Stands as reason that let's say we need change. Boom, now we're down to 2,200 characters. Like, it's safe to say that maybe we should manage our gun control. We should manage our gun control more like New Zealand. Actually, we can delete the more. We should manage our gun control like New Zealand. I guess more makes sense because you don't want to do it exactly like it. More like New Zealand. Just to be clear, we're assuming you're being clear. Citizens of New Zealand are allowed to own guns. There's no law. So, I mean, that's. I'm a judge to try to give some feedback here, and you're using too many. Now I want to go down through this and get it down below 2,000 characters. These sources can come together. I think that's just from me copy and pasting incorrectly. But let's just bring them up so I'm being fair. And you can embed links in this debate also. The site allows you to embed links. So you could actually just embed the links within the numbers yourself. And let's say you embed the links. How much room would that save right there, just embedding the links? Now we're down to 1,300 characters. We need to be doing more. No. We need to make sure that good gun owners are the only gun owners in the U. We know you're talking about are the only gun owners. Boom. We're down to 1,300 characters. So this is, I don't call this high effort, Owen. with this fact that I could get this down to probably 1,000 characters. So you left 2,000 characters on the table where you could have made your argument. You could have explained. Explaining the studies are very persuasive. New Zealand has 2.4 gun deaths per million people. 69% of say moderate. Okay, so this could all come down. So no, I'm not going to say you did a great job. And I wouldn't, that's not based on skill level, because I'm not going to be harsh towards your skill level or anything like that. I'm just judging effort alone. And if we're judging the word good job by level of effort you put in, then no, you didn't do a good job. And now I'm looking at all these spaces too. There's like, you're not writing paragraphs, you're writing like points here. That is absolutely taking up like a ton of characters that don't need to be taken up. I could probably consolidate Khan's stuff too. Maybe I'll do it for fun. I'll consolidate his first round to show that Pro's not the only one making mistakes here. So Khan's final round. Pro's arguments are persuasive and well-meaning. Don't say that, dude. Don't say that. But they are unrealistic. Now, they say that. Like, that's fine. Pro's arguments are unrealistic. Skip it. The Pro admits that our gun control efforts fail. I didn't see that. Also showed that gun violence is not a big issue, as they claim, according to the data that I have presented. Moreover, Pro does not have a realistic plan besides copying other countries. This is where I would agree with Khan on. You haven't really put forward a case, and you should have, and Khan should have hammered this more. I think if Khan just focused on this and hammered that might be enough to win the debate. But he doesn't. He just, it's almost like a bare assertion. He doesn't really put much effort into this. Which is no assurance of success and might even violate the Second Amendment if not done carefully. Well, I'm sure Pro is saying that he wants it done carefully. So that's not really an argument. We also have to question the value of Pro's suggestion, with stricter gun laws to get rid of. No, that's from Mom, buddy. With stricter gun control laws, get rid of the illegal trade of guns. No. Would there still be too many guns for the government to control? Yes. Therefore, tighter gun laws would not make any difference, as criminals do not follow any laws. He's already responded to this also by saying that the supply of guns would be lower. And although Pro didn't say it, and I'm not counting it for him, he could argue that a lot of the guns obtained illegally are originally purchased legally, so it by making it less legal, you could control a lot of that. I want to ask you voters which approach makes more sense. Should we concentrate on improving gun laws that have not worked so far, and spend time and energy on this task, knowing that guns kill not even 1% of the population? Or should we avoid spending our time and energy on changing gun laws, pay attention to the main causes of death? Well, I don't see why you couldn't do both, man. Like heart disease, okay. You should favor Khan because an argument that deals with social change and laws should not be decided based on who can appeal more to emotions. I mean, I think your arguments appeal more to emotions than Pro's. And this is coming from a guy that pretty much agrees with the position you're taking in this debate. Pro has not shown why stricter gun laws are necessary, except for an emotional appeal. The emotional appeal is that a shitload of people die. Like 20,000 people die. So you can call that an emotional appeal, and that might be technically correct. But the judges are going to weigh like the cost of human life, whether you think it's an appeal to emotion or not. The data reveals that gun violence and the demand for gun regulations are much less urgent than other issues that have more severe consequences. Focus on evidence, not feelings. Thank you. Okay, well, I can tell you, Pro wins. Okay, because Pro, you didn't have anything to respond to this. You only mitigated. his responses to this. You didn't say anything other than mitigate. You gotta do more than mitigate your opponent's arguments. You need some positive argumentation, unless you completely mitigate them. If you take all his advantages and show how they're only they're not an advantage at all, then you win. So he could say, if the difference between gun laws and no gun laws is 1 death, then pro would win, because you didn't frame the argument too well. And I think most of your first round should have been a positive argument instead of rebuttal. Let's just go over this, because I want to see how much room that Khan wasted. Just to show, so nobody can say I'm only trying to help one side here. 2,300 characters. Almost 1,000. Look at this. He did right here. He looks like he embedded the links. So that's already an improvement over what Khan did as far as saving space. But he didn't do anything with the save space, because he still got like 700 characters there. Pro is using a statistical argument to say gun control needs to be increased. Wow, we already know that. We read the damn argument. Here we go. We could delete this. That doesn't say anything. You know, get rid of sentences that don't say anything. Gun-related deaths do not affect even 1% of the population. This is another thing that Pro did too. He showed that it affects more than just the people that die. He showed it affects the people around them and the people that survive gun shootings. The state with the highest number of gun-related deaths is Mississippi, and that is only 29 point. In contrast, the lowest number of gun-related deaths is, say, in Massachusetts, which only has, that is only 333%. So I asked, but like, what is the point of increasing? Okay, so instead of asking questions, we'll do this. Let's delete this. There is no point in increasing restrictions on guns when not even 1% of Americans are dying from it a year. Let's just go from it. Even Pro's own math establishes this effect. Pro's math establishes this as fact. Boom. You actually could have embedded it better. You could have just embedded it right here, but that's okay. While mass shootings are scary, parents are naturally in their right to be afraid of them. How can you justify the use of gun regulations? I'm just gonna get below 2,000 and show you. We should not create policy based on unfounded fears, but facts. U.S. says 130,000 schools. Out of that, only only 348 schools were subject to mass shootings in 2023. Let's actually take off some of the sting from the word mass and just go with shootings. Okay. That is okay, so let's not say literally. That is, let's go that's. Let's do a thing. Only 27%. You take the word literally out of here, okay? You have a higher chance. So we're already, see that it's already several thousand characters short. There you go. And I just got started editing this also. I could probably take another 500 or 600 off. So it's important to save space, and it's important that it's important that you show some good argumentation. I could suggest specific things. I don't think specific things are going to help too much, because you need to have the skill for more debates. Like, I know some stuff off the top of my head. Like, I know that New Zealand, right? They had gun laws that, and it showed a decrease in some crime after that, and that's what matters. What the level of crime and stuff before and after that is. And a country that's really close as far as like culture and demographics and whatnot to that is Australia. And over the same course of time, without having any changes in the gun laws, you saw similar results in Australia as you did New Zealand. And then you also have the fact that property crimes rose dramatically after banning guns. Or I guess it's not an outright ban. So I would say in your save what you're hammering him on, like most of this, for the next round, round 2, and just go over other stuff like showing that increase in property crimes, but then also maybe point out or make an argument for why freedom is a little bit more important than safety. It's more important. There's like 100 arguments you can make. Anyway, I hope you guys gained something from listening to my vote, and I hope that not only that you gained something, that you enjoyed listening.